Alrighty, so here we are. I'm recording this at the evening that your week 5 learned together, coming into week 6 in our first dev project. And I want to say a word or two about the dev projects because, for one thing, thanks to those of you that have already signed up for a code review or a code assistance, and this will apply to either. But please, please, please set a reminder for yourself that you set an appointment with me, because I've had a couple occasions where students have in the past set up sessions and then forgotten they did it. So please, in your calendars, whatever you use, however you need to remember, set a reminder. Okay. That you either had a code review or a code assistant session. Remember, assistant sessions are not required, code reviews are. Your code is due at this point. By the time I wake up on the 16th, you'll have the following week to complete if you turned it in here. Some of you I've already talked to, some of you are going to come in for reviews and assistant sessions here. Okay, but refer back to week 5 if you have any questions about that. One of the things I want to talk about is why I feel DevTools is so important for learning JavaScript. And I have live server running over here in the browser, and I have my JavaScript paused. I wrote some simple JavaScript because the other thing I've had a student say to me this week, and I thought I really need to listen to this, is that they feel the code written by some students, including myself, can be a little too complicated and they want simpler examples. So I said, okay, I'm going to write a simpler example. So in doing that, I want to show you, and we're just going to create an error real quick. So if I go into here, you can see I have two functions. One is get list of fixed cats, and then get list of cats. I'm going to call this function, but let's just say for now I do that. I'm going to go ahead and hit run here. Right, I'll refresh the page, and then what will happen, I need to get rid of the breakpoint, and I'll refresh the page. And then what will happen is if you have this down in the console, if you have something red, and you can also see it in your code, this is what we call a hard error. And a hard error stops execution of your code, and nothing will happen from that point on. So that's why we see no output here, is that when it tries to, and it even shows you is not defined. And that's where just simple errors like that, DevTools will really help you understand that, or at least see them where they're at. So now I'd come back over to code and I would look through there and determine where my error was. And in that case, now, right, you'd come back here, hit refresh again, hope the error goes away, and then you would set a breakpoint for your first function call. And in general, by the way, your functions, right, the way you set up these files, you generally have your data up here at the top. So I have an empty array. I have a pet population array of objects. These are cats, just different information. And then I have my functions. And then I have my calls to my, what we call invoking, right? Or just calls to the functions themselves. Okay. So if I set this breakpoint, right, here's a simpler example. Now, this is not a complete dev zero, but it's a really good start. So I would refresh the page, and now I'm going to call this function. I'm going to pass in that. And by that, that's the other thing about DevTools is look at this. When you just roll over, it shows you, oh, I have 3 items in there, and I can kind of briefly see the data. And now as I step into this code, what you can see is that I passed an argument, became a parameter. I named it something different, which I did because it made more sense, because it was actually its pet population, which could include dogs, and then I could filter out my dogs. That'd be another good way to do it. And then I referenced it as cats. It's the same data structure. It's the same variable, but inside of this function, then it is referred or is declared as cats, but it's still that pet population. Okay, and I know this has thrown a couple of you off. So I just want to give you that. Hopefully it helps clear that up. And again, DevTools is great because it shows you what's happening here, right? And now I'm going to run a loop over this array of objects. And for each one, I'm going to call it cat, which is really nice because it really is looking at each individual cat that I'm going to do something with. So then I go, okay, now I'm going to call another function. So this is my second function call. I'm passing in that cat object, right? So I'm passing in, and you can see which one it is by looking here, and it should be this first one because it's iterating over that array of objects. And then I'm going to ask, is cat object is fixed, and is cat object available for adoption? And if they are, then I'm going to push that object into push means push that value into this new array that I can report on later. Now, this is just one idea. I don't want to see this code. This is just me showing you an example because the idea is for you to learn to express your own ideas. Okay. Now, I push, let's go ahead and step through. We step through, else we're just going to, if the cat is not available, then we're just going to say not available for adoption, right? And then we're back here, right? So now we're going to process the next one, right? Boom, next one. And now I'm going to show on page. Okay, so I say the tabby is not available for adoption. And again, like it's only the tabby that met the criteria, which you want your code to be able to hit all of the logic that you've written. Okay, now you definitely want to write a little more involved logic here, but this is a good start, really good start. So now after I get my list, then I do another loop where I say cat up for adoption for each cat available. And then instead of calling another function, I'm just doing show on page. Okay. And then at the end, I just show on page. And actually, I didn't finish this as I was just writing the end of this to actually give me some summary data about the number of pets in the population. Okay. But one of the things that I see really throws students off is when you're passing, right? Because this is an argument, when I call the function, right, here, then I can pass it in, I can name it something different, but the data is the same. It's the same thing. It's just now declared as a local variable as a different name. Now, the one thing I didn't do maybe clearly for some of you here is I didn't have a function that calls another function that returns a value. Well, the reason I didn't have to do that is I updated a value already in the global namespace. Okay. So in that case, that is doing that same thing. But if I did have something I was returning, then I would need to make sure I capture that value here on the global uh, space, global scope, so I could use it in another function call. And that's the other thing I've seen throw students off this week. Okay. Okay. So I talked about the script tag, and here's the other thing is that you're responsible for everything that's in your code. So if there's anything in there, is available for me to ask you, and you need to be able to describe what it's doing. And I know that we've written code along with Andrew, so it's very tempting to just pull his code and change the variable names. And that's like kind of step 0.5, but to give me that code in a code review means that you didn't write it, you just took it and modified the variable names, which is not the idea. Again, you want to make this code your own. You want to make it do what you want it to do. It's okay to be inspired by people, but it's not okay just to copy somebody else's code and change a variable name and suddenly claim it as your own, because it's not your own writing of your code. And that's what really I hope you're here to learn. Okay. But I know it can be tempting, especially if you're not understanding the concepts. And if you're not, then that's definitely where I should be seeing you. Well, I'm seeing many of you, which I'm so happy. But if you're not getting these concepts coming to see me, but this is a week where it really will start to come home how well you've gotten the concepts that we've covered. Okay, I don't know if that helps. Here's what I want on your reply. How do you remind yourself? What do you do? What do you do now that you've set an appointment? If you haven't, now's the time. Go back to week 5 and get that. You can see the link to the sign up sheet there. Hopefully you've already done that. But if you haven't, but if you have, either way in your reply, I want you to tell me, A, was there anything I covered today that didn't make sense and you want to ask me about? And B, I want you to tell me, how do you remind yourself you have an appointment? And please set that for our code review. All right. Have a good one. See you later.